Welcome to the Cyber Center for Biblical Studies. Hi, my name is Herb Bateman. Today we want to talk about a book in Kregel's series Handbooks for Interpreting the Old Testament. Today we have with us Lee Compson from Milford Brethren Church in northern Indiana, and we're going to discuss a book written by Gary Smith entitled Interpreting the Prophetic Books. Lee, welcome.
It's great to be here.
Well, good. I'm glad you were willing to tell us a little something about this book. Would you take a few moments and tell us how this book kind of unfolds as you have read it?
Yeah, this book written by Gary Smith is an excellent work just to outline the various interpretive issues and also preaching issues that come along with the prophetic books in Scripture. It's geared to help us understand and preach prophecy. It's written for seminary students. It's written for pastors who have an expertise or at least experience in the original languages. So it is a fairly high-level book, but at the same time, it brings things down to a level where you can easily turn them around and teach your congregation accurately and effectively from the prophetic books. As far as the outline goes and the various things he touches on, he first focuses on the traits and the characteristics of the prophetic genre, which especially in prophecy are numerous and various and complex, and he does a good job covering those things. He also gets into each prophetic book and the major themes that are covered in those books, which is helpful to give you kind of a big picture look at prophetic books. He covers interpretive issues in depth. In prophecy, there are things like metaphors and figures of speech you have to be really careful with. You have to consider how literal are we to take these metaphors and these prophetic predictions. He talks about the various ways to understand fulfillment of prophecy, which is important. So he does a nice job in the middle there covering the interpretive issues. And then he also covers, towards the end, tips for preaching. Just practical ways to help you outline, help you proclaim, and help you apply and make relevant for your congregation the things that are being described in the prophetic books.
Well, as you think back on the book itself and these different sections and these different topics that the author has addressed, what were some of the insights that you appreciated most as you think back onto that book and having read it?
Yeah, I really appreciated the major themes that he covers in each of the books. He goes through each, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations. He goes through each book of prophecy, and he talks about the various contextual issues, the various themes that you need to be aware of, the context with which they were written in. He does a nice job covering those, and that's just helpful for me as a pastor when I'm preparing to preach, let's say from Isaiah, to know, okay, what are the things I need to be harping on or highlighting when I'm going through and preparing my individual sermons. What are the key words and phrases I need to be looking for, and the themes I need to make sure I'm stressing as far as that goes. Also, I really appreciated the end part where he talks about practical tips for preaching. I'm a younger preacher. I don't have a ton of experience, so any advice I can get along those lines, any expertise I can glean is always important. It was refresher courses on my homiletics and preaching courses from seminary, and it was really good reminders of how to engage your audience, how to illustrate various things, and how to help them really help your audience connect with what Scripture's saying.
Well, when you think back of these positive things, and I know Gary Smith does an excellent job in outlining and working his way through each one of those chapters that you've highlighted, what were some of the things you wish Gary Smith had covered that might have been helpful to you, that you wish a little bit more information may have been given?
There wasn't a lot I felt like this book was lacking. A couple things he does touch on that maybe could have used more attention. He talks about use of the Old Testament and the New Testament, especially with how it relates to prophecy, focusing on how that was fulfilled or how that was connected in the New Testament, looking back in the Old. There could have been some more there. It would have been nice. I know there are other really good works you can refer to, but he does a nice job broaching the subject. I wish it could have gone maybe a little bit deeper in that respect. There is, in the prophets, maybe a subgenre of apocalyptic material that wasn't really addressed all that often. And now I assume there will probably be other works in this series that will cover that more in depth, especially as it relates to Revelation. But I think the apocalyptic genre, and at least as its own category, could use some further explanation, even as it relates to Daniel, Ezekiel, and Zechariah, some of the places where it does show up. Honestly, there wasn't. That's really nitpicking, though. He does a great job of at least giving you the main bullet points to understand on all of the issues regarding prophecy.
Okay. As you think about that chapter, and you mentioned it concerning preaching tips, what are one or two preaching tips that he gave that you thought were, point on, that you really appreciated?
Sure. Yeah. He helps. He's very helpful when he addresses identifying the main point and designing your outline around that main point, even wording and phrasing it, which a lot of preachers do, and you'll learn that in homiletics and in seminary a lot of times. But it was helpful to see how that can be applied in the prophetic books specifically. I liked how he helped draw comparisons and points of relevance between what they were going through in the time of the original audience and their context and what we can be going through now. Because sometimes that can be hard to really grasp. Is the people of Israel were dealing with political enemies and they were dealing with sin of idolatry, and it's not always cut and dry how we can apply that in our day, but he offers some very good pointers of, okay, this is where it can relate and this is how you can draw out the principle that still applies even though the context may be different.
Okay, very good. Having read the book on interpreting the prophetic books in the Old Testament, is there a particular book, prophetic book that has, as a result of reading Gary's work, is there a particular prophetic book you really feel drawn to preach as a result of having read Gary's work?
At this point, I am planning, though, later on in the year, as I planned out my sermon schedule, I have planned to cover Old Testament books in general. So I'll be covering, on 1 week, I'll be covering Jonah, and then the next week I might be covering Micah and Hosea, all in one week, so that our people can refamiliarize themselves with books that, especially books of prophecy, that they may not be well acquainted with. So this book has kind of spurred me on and compelled me to take that series and work it through in that sense, just covering the minor prophets week by week as we go through it during the summer.
Do any books, as you're thinking about this potential series, are there any other books that you might appeal to supplement what you've already got here from Gary?
Yeah, there are a lot of good resources out there, numerous ones. A couple ones I use are Walter Brueggemann's The Prophetic Imagination. It's a different approach and written differently, but it covers the same ideas of what are the interpretive issues in prophecy in the Old Testament prophetic books. And he's a well-renowned scholar that is an expert in that field and does a nice job of conveying the big themes and big ideas to remember when we read the prophetic books. Brent Sandy's Plowshares and Pruning Hooks is another one that's really helpful. And Walter Kaiser's done a lot, especially in the interpretive issues area, And I think he even wrote one, Use of the Old Testament in the New, I believe is the title of that. So those are some really good resources that really complement this book, and this book refers to in some cases as well. So if I were looking for an arsenal of books to use to attack my sermon series, whether I'm doing it on one prophetic book or just in prophecy in general, those were some of the key ones I would look at.
Well, good. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little heads up about this new resource in the Kregel Handbook for Exegesis of the Old Testament. Thank you for joining us, and I trust that this may be helpful and a helpful review, resource review for you. Once again, the book we've been discussing has been Interpreting the Prophetic Books by Gary Smith. Thank you.